After 18 years in leadership development and having worked with more than 350 leaders, I've identified that 70% of them are actually struggling with the same 3 areas. That is strategy, people, or systems. So let's take a closer look on each of them. When we are looking at strategy, is that the majority of leaders, they are doing this all by themselves. They cannot go to their teams, they cannot go to their boardroom, they cannot go to their peers, and they are struggling with questions that are keeping them up at night. 70% of them are actually exposed to imposter syndrome, which means that they have the fear of missing something out, they have the fear of making mistakes. While if you're doing this together, it brings so much more strength. It builds a relationship of trust, and it just gives much more depth to what you're doing. And that's the true value of an executive career coach. It's your monthly or weekly sounding board to check in what can we do to enrich or diversify perspectives and navigate you in a much faster way than you're used to. When we are looking at the people side of transformations, the majority of questions that I see nowadays are connected to either, unfortunately, burnout related questions, and how do I keep my team motivated in times of fast transformation? How do I ensure that my team members are having joy in their work, feeling purpose and meaning in their work, especially with the rapid rise up with agentic AI? Because when AI will take over a part of the tasks of our activities, what is remained for us? And that's an important question that leaders need to be able to answer in full transparency, and inviting actually leaders or inviting their team members to co-create with them. This creates a level of engagement, a level of belonging that will strengthen the overall transformation. And when we're looking at systems, is that this is the engine of a company. This is where companies can scale the fastest. And at the same time, if it's not adopted, if the technology changes are not adopted, it will 100% fail. So what I've seen over those more than 350 leaders and those who belong to the 30% who succeed is that they master to simultaneously work on their strategy, their people, and their system. So going more in depth, supported by 3 use cases that we have gained over the past years, is that I worked with this brilliant leader on strategy. He even wrote a book about strategic leadership, so nothing to add on that. And he wanted to scale his company. But there was actually resistance from the team, because in order to scale, we wanted to hire 10 people in 90 days. And there was no collaboration platform, there was no hiring system, and no onboarding system. So instead of focusing on one of those 3 elements, we decided to simultaneously focus on all 3 of them. So we implemented a hiring system connected to the strategy. We implemented an onboarding system connected to the people, and then deployed a collaboration platform to embed this onboarding program so that the new hires could very easily flow into their new roles and had a flying start of their new career. Then on the people side, I worked with a CTO who unfortunately was very close to burnout. So we sat together first to identify what is the root cause of the actual situation. And we identified 2 pain points. One was that there was unclarity between the role split of the CTO and the CEO. And the second one was that there needed to be more structure in the way he worked, but also how the company culture worked. So we reviewed together, identified the most important tasks connected to the role split between CTO and CEO, and mapped this into a workload review. Afterwards, we translated this to a meeting structure. So we identified what are the top 10 meetings that needs to be deployed either on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or on a quarterly basis. And through that structure, we created peace, we created clarity, we created a system that when talents were coming with ad hoc questions that was keeping him up at 2 a.m. in the evening to solve these, and that was diluting from his strategic focus, is that this meeting structure guided him in saying, this is not important now, it can wait until Monday, it can wait into next month, because this is when we have our next meeting agendaed. So it's this kind of structure was part of a different way of working smarter instead of harder. and supported this leader and as part of the overall company to lead with more clarity and more ease. Then another CTO I was working with, and I asked him, how do your employees are collaborating with agentic AI? And he mentioned, yes, we implemented ChatGPT. And I started to laugh and said, well, you implemented chaos with a subscription fee. And he looked at me like, what are you meaning? And it's good that companies are implementing LLM, but it doesn't stop there. It's actually a starting point to further guide and support your talents about creating boundaries. When do I reach out to my leader? When do I reach out to the LLM? And when do I automate tasks through agentic AI? It starts with deploying an AI governance. This is a step that is often overlooked. And you can compare it with when you deploy a real estate project. You first have your architectural plan before you start building. So this AI governance is your architectural plan before you start building. This is where we support leaders on positioning AI in a way it connects to your strategic goals. It's enhancing the human capabilities. And because of that, it's actually an amplifier within your organization instead of an expensive subscription fee that is creating chaos. What we see again in this pattern is that approaching transformations, and those leaders who belong to the 30% that are successfully doing this, is that they are aligning this SPS framework. They are applying this successfully. And I know this because after deploying 20 plus programs, including a European data science curriculum at a European level for a scope of 10,000 employees, is that I noticed this pattern and this holistic approach that is differentiating success versus failure. And what I aspire through executive career coaching as a founder is that I want leaders to succeed, combined with happiness. We are all spending the majority of our time at work. The majority of our time and energy goes to that. So yes, we have a commitment as leaders to make work fun, to make the most and the best out of our time here together. And that's being connected to creating this right ecosystem for growth, creating a culture that is inviting your talents to develop themselves, to develop through individual growth, the company growth, and that actually is the role of a leader. Of course, as a leader, you can strengthen your leadership development skills by yourself, but it takes you much more time in a market that is driven by customer centricity and driven by speed. So when you are figuring out this all by yourself, your competitors are actually advancing, they're scaling faster, and because of that, you're losing momentum, you're losing opportunities, and you're losing the risk to become obsolete. So when you decide to do this together, and we can organize a strategic transformation intake to identify your personalized roadmap, then subscribe through the link below. And I'm looking forward to meet you in person and to see how we can strengthen your unique situation to scale through better performance, better engagement, and better growth.